underwater last week. DC was underwater last week.
Why haven't we figured this out? That's the question, and that's when you get angry.
Okay, this is me. This is the dateable me.
Guatemala has signed a so-called Safe Third Country agreement with the U.S. 2 days after President Trump threatened to impose tariffs if the deal wasn't signed. The agreement would require Central American migrants traveling through Guatemala to claim asylum there instead of at the U.S. border. After a jury awarded $2 billion to a San Francisco couple who said Bayer's Roundup weed killer caused their cancer, a California judge reduced the damages on appeal by 95% to $86.7 million. Judge Winifred Smith said the amount the jury awarded was unconstitutionally high, but she rejected Bayer's request to throw the verdict out completely.
It is a safety requirement that you remain alert and vigilant at all times, because the police will no longer answer your calls when you have any needs.
This is the message that greeted travelers arriving at Hong Kong International Airport, where more than 1,000 anti-government demonstrators filled the arrivals terminal. They're accusing the police of being slow to respond to attacks on protesters and civilians by suspected pro-Beijing Triad members last Sunday, and they're planning another protest at the site of those attacks, Yuen Long, tomorrow. The Department of Justice approved T-Mobile's $26 billion purchase of Sprint on 2 conditions for what will be the third largest wireless provider. It has to speed up its 5G rollout, and it has to create a new competitor by selling off parts of its business to satellite TV provider Dish Network. But the deal's not done yet. It still needs to be approved in federal court and faces an antitrust lawsuit from 13 states and D.C.
This summer's scorching heat has broken records across the UK, Europe, and the US, and has pushed climate activism to a boiling point.
All the criminals here!
In April, 1,000 people with the climate change group Extinction Rebellion were arrested when they stopped traffic in central London for more than a week.
The suffragettes.
And this week, they went to DC to force Congress members to pay attention.
Extinction Rebellion uses all kinds of tactics. Mostly it's about disruption. So a group of, I think it was 18 people from Extinction Rebellion DC glued themselves into the tunnels underneath the Capitol building so that as the senators and congresspeople were going to a vote, they actually had to walk past them.
So their message isn't exactly cheerful. They say that we're in the middle of a climate emergency that could drive humanity to extinction. And this warrants extreme, attention-grabbing methods, as well as demands. They want carbon emissions to reach net zero by 2025, and say an assembly of regular people, not elected officials, should oversee this sweeping social change. Back when we thought we had 50 to 100 years to turn things around, demands looked a lot less urgent than these. But now, the timeline has shortened. And this has kicked off a debate among climate change experts. How should they convey this urgency? For example, does calling for a 50% reduction in emissions in the next 12 years leave people frozen, hopeless, and unable to act? Or does it motivate them? Or will it make them complacent because they think there's time to procrastinate?
The question is, right, are people getting the impression from this discussion that if we get to a 50% reduction by 2030, everything's going to be fine, and if we blow past the target, the world's going to end? Because I would say it's going to be extremely hard and probably won't happen that we will get to 50% by 2030.
Other experts disagree.
I'm on the side of saying that we should have targets, and we should hold our leaders accountable to meeting those targets. I don't think that anything in our politics or in our personal lives really gets done unless we have a deadline.
However experts present reality, the apocalypse take and the idea that this is an acute crisis is gaining ground. In May, the UK's widely read newspaper announced that it would substitute the words climate change with climate emergency or crisis. As of this month, 160 million people in more than 18 countries live in jurisdictions that have declared a climate emergency. And that, too, is something certain researchers are unhappy with.
I don't particularly like the term climate emergency. It has to do basically with the dictionary. An emergency is an unexpected, short-lived event that requires rapid action. And the only part of that really applies to climate change is a rapid action event.
None of this is new information, but suddenly something like a critical mass of people seem to think they're living in the end of times. And that's what has scientists wondering if they should ditch the future talk and go all in, or whether a measured response carried out over the next few decades is still the way to go. The reality is, we probably need both.
Seven months ago, a pregnant woman named Marsha Jones got shot in a fight in Pleasant Grove, Alabama. She ended up getting charged with manslaughter as a result. A grand jury indicted Jones because the gunshot led her to lose her baby, and she allegedly started the fight that led to the gunshot. And though prosecutors dropped the case once it started getting national attention, it turns out lots of other women have faced similar charges. In fact, 38 states allow charges to be brought for the injury and deaths of unborn fetuses. In some cases, these laws have come from well-intentioned outrage over crimes against pregnant women. In 1984 in Minnesota, for instance, an alleged drunk driver struck a woman who was 8.5 months pregnant, killing her fetus. The state Supreme Court ruled that the driver couldn't be charged with vehicular homicide since the fetus was not a person. So Minnesota passed a statute that made injuring or killing a fetus a felony, creating the nation's first fetal homicide law. But in other states, fetal homicide legislation became a way to smuggle the idea that the fetus was a person into the law.
These laws have overwhelmingly been put into place by anti-abortion, anti-choice legislative activists. When there is a high-profile attack on a pregnant woman and she loses the pregnancy, or both the pregnant woman and the future child dies, they are ready and waiting to propose legislation and create an additional crime of causing the death of a fetus.
And even though they generally weren't intended to be used against pregnant women, police and prosecutors have often done just that. During the national hysteria over crack babies, for instance, California charged Roseanne Mercedes Juarigüe with murder in 1992 because she gave birth to a stillborn infant after allegedly using cocaine during her pregnancy. Similarly, Alabama, the state where Marsha Jones was charged, passed a chemical endangerment law in 2006 that was originally intended to prosecute adults who exposed children to meth labs. It wound up getting used to prosecute women who used drugs while pregnant, even if their baby was born without problems. And women across the country have been arrested for harming their fetuses in other ways, too. In 2004, a Utah woman named Melissa Rowland allegedly refused to get a C-section before delivering twins. When one was stillborn, the state charged her with murder. In 2010, a woman named Christine Taylor was arrested for attempting feticide in Iowa after falling down the stairs while pregnant. And in 2011, an Indiana woman named Bebe Shuai attempted suicide by eating rat poison, lost her 33-week-old fetus, and was charged with its murder. All those charges eventually got reduced or thrown out, but many other cases never get public attention.
We are very often successful in getting charges dropped or dismissed and convictions overturned. Sometimes, though, only after a woman has spent many years in jail or prison. But most people cannot afford or find the kind of representation that will give them the opportunity to challenge charges against them.
All of this leaves many women stuck in a gray area where their fetus has legal rights, making them into criminals when their pregnancies go wrong.
New York subway might be the crown jewel of its public transit system. But for 1 million people, it's all but inaccessible. For people with disabilities, their commutes are long and drawn out in a way that makes getting onto the platform feel like they're completing a maze. But this is still better than it used to be.
I now lift my pen to sign this Americans with Disabilities Act and say...
Before 1990, when the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed, a landmark piece of legislation that guaranteed the rights of differently abled people, getting to the train platform was extremely difficult and dangerous for people with disabilities, and not even an option for those in wheelchairs. It's been 29 years since the passage of the bill, and the MTA says it's made 120 stations fully accessible for all riders, which is still only 24%. For many, the improvements are not coming fast enough. So in the past year, the MTA has tried to do more. They've pledged to make all stations fully accessible by 2034, and they've hired their very first accessibility chief to help them get there.
When you live in New York City, public transportation is your main form of transportation.
Whoops, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Alex Alagoudin's job is to improve accessibility for subway and bus riders, as well as services for people with disabilities, such as Accessoride.
We have one of the largest transportation systems in North America. We operate a 24/7 transit system, which presents its own challenges because a lot of the work needed to make accessibility happen has to happen while trains and buses are moving. Obviously, the system is very old, more than 100 years old, and trying to rebuild the infrastructure literally means moving heaven and earth to put in elevators and make other accessibility improvements. That means you need to find somewhere on the street where the mezzanine lines up with the platform to put in an elevator. That doesn't always happen. How has accessible transportation in New York City changed since the ADA was passed? It's been monumental. There was a point in time where there were no accessible stations.
But disability advocates want more. They want clear signage, audio announcements, life-saving features such as raised braille and bright paint that highlights stairs and the edge of the platform, and elevators that work.
This is the transformation we need because this system is at 20%. 1 in 5 stations is accessible. 25 elevators go out of service a day. So a quarter of the time, a station is just completely offline, like cannot be entered or exited from by someone in a wheelchair. Oh, that's a pretty big number. So that's not just like a bad luck. That's something that's hitting a lot of people, and that violates ADA. This city was built on elevators. It's a vertical city, right? It's not complicated. It's elevators and it's ramps. And to get you to underground transit, you find a way for people to get there without stairs. That's it. Why haven't we figured this out in New York? It's economically ruinous. It's not necessary. Like, we can fix this. Other cities have all done it. Like every other big city in the United States has done it. To get to work from home on the subway used to be a half hour, reliably. Walk over to the closest station, take the train downtown, get off, walk over to work. That's just what it was. Then, to do it by wheelchair, you roll over to the second closest station, go down there, then you have to do an extra transfer because the station that I would get out at is not accessible, assuming the elevators are working. But when the elevators go out, it can be an hour and a half, and you can be stuck. It's 40 minutes from home. You're a block away from work in the station. There's no way out. And their only line of defense is calling the fire or the police department to come down to the station. That'll take them a half hour to get there. They'll carry you up the stairs. For that to be the plan when an elevator goes out is staggering. And they talk about it's too expensive to build elevators and build ramps. That's what's expensive. It's morally reprehensible that you're doing that to people.
Oh my God, this is the cutest dog it's ever lived. Oh my God. Yeah, you think this dog's gonna get me swiped on?
How far would you go to get a date?
All right, look in here.
This puppy isn't mine. The coat isn't mine. The cardigan is definitely not mine.
It's great. We're done.
Everything was bought or borrowed for one purpose. An experiment we signed up for this winter to make a dateable version of me. It's all under the guidance of a company called ViDA, Virtual Dating Assistants, which promises to find you the perfect match by crafting, then portraying the best version of you on dating apps. Scott Valdez is the tech bro behind it all. Excellent. He's been breaking down dating into cold hard data since the early 2000s.
Give me some early days of how this began for you.
I tried to use a popular dating site called Plenty of Fish. I sent, I think 37 messages and got literally no responses initially. If there was one period on POF where I was literally tracking 18 different variables on each profile that I visited to try to see what correlated to a certain message working or not working.
Scott gathered all his research and then had the idea to hire someone else to manage his profiles for him.
I actually hired a guy on Craigslist to kind of go in and manage everything for me. I showed him all of my best messages, and he actually took what I was doing and improved upon it from there because he had way more time than I did. He was a writer by trade, and he just blew it up.
Scott's experiment laid the groundwork for his company. ViDA has software that turns dating into science.
For example, if we were going to use a dating site, we have the ability to go through and download all of the profiles in the local area. The algorithm, what it does is based on millions of messages that we've already sent, it predicts who are the users that are most likely to respond to the claim. So we're able to identify the people who are most likely to respond, what day they're most likely to respond to a message, and what message they're most likely to respond to.
Clients who pay up get a lot more than an algorithm. For a hefty monthly fee, they get people who take over their dating life for them. The more they pay, the more dates they get. ViDA signed me up for the gold package. Everyone fudges a little on dating apps. With ViDA, you get over a dozen remote consultants who take that fudging to the extreme. First, I was grilled for over an hour by a matchmaker based in Brazil. ViDA wanted to learn all about the real me before building the improved model.
Tell me some adjectives you would use to describe yourself.
This is the hardest stuff.
How would you describe your sense of humor?
I like dry sarcastic, but I like really cheesy, silly stuff too.
Do you feel like you have a type, or do your friends tease you about having a type?
I mean, honestly, no. Like, not really. Like, honestly,
Then I talked to a stylist based in Philadelphia.
So what I usually like to start off with is the dressy look.
It's got a fancier lining. This is kind of fun.
She suggested I buy $1,000 in new clothes, and then I get a haircut.
Okay. This is me. This is the dateable me.
Then ViDA brought in the professional photographer. ViDA compiled all this stuff to make profiles for me on 3 of the most popular dating apps. Every profile was basically the same.
This is what I look like to the world on Bumble, thanks to ViDA. Oh shit, it looks like they actually cleaned up my eye a little bit too. Like they got rid of some of the bags, maybe this went with my cheekbones here. Like it's like I've been airbrushed.
The ViDA version of me got swiped on. And this is when ViDA gives customers what they're really paying for. It's not just about the best pictures or a puppy. ViDA does the flirting for you.
They have been conversing with some people for me. Hi, Evan, how's your weekend going? And then I say, great so far. I guess that means we're exclusive now, right? Oh, God. And then it's like a winking emoji. Oh, Lord.
All these lines came from Texas. Specifically, this apartment complex in Austin, where my ViDA ghostwriter lives.
So you are me on the apps.
I am you on the apps, yes. I'm not a big fan of copy and paste. There is kind of a formula to follow, which is humor, right? And women getting bombarded with hey, what's up? Or, hey, you're cute. Let me take you out sometime. So trying to get away from that and do something different. If she's into, she puts like she's a big foodie on her profile. Maybe you can call it. I'd be like, hey, are we sweets compatible?
You're flirting all day,
right?
But on behalf of other people.
And again, as you can see, it's all banter, it's light, it's playful, it's on the surface, right?
Okay.
It's never too deep. There's a lot of trial and error, and there's a lot of stuff that we back up with our data. Like there's a lot of messages, scenarios that we throw out. We collectively group that data, and over time, see what works and what doesn't. Actually, you just got a match.
Wait, holy shit.
Yeah, you just got a match right now.
After 2 weeks, ViDA got me 10 numbers, which, if I followed ViDA's guidelines, would result in dates where women would not know they had been flirting with Alberto. The company strongly suggests men don't mention ViDA on the first date. Quote, if you're worried she may suspect someone else was involved, don't be, the website says. But I was trying to arrange interviews with women to talk to them about the service. So I told them about it. and they were pissed. Although one of them was still willing to go on an off-camera date with me.
Women that I talk to, they react to this same way they would if it was a pickup artist, right? They feel like they've been manipulated. They feel like they've been lied to. Do you understand that response from them?
I haven't really seen that response very much. So
yeah, but usually don't tell the girls for like 7 or 8 dates. I'm talking about like.
No, but I have actually told people on the first date.
Okay.
I personally experimented with that.
Okay.
You know, and it's obviously it's a mixed review. Not everybody is gonna like finding that on the first date, but it doesn't always crash and burn. And the reality is that, you know, personally, I'm of the opinion that it's not that dishonest. That it's kind of a gray area.
I gotta tell you, gray area is not like the most romantic phrase I've ever heard in my life.
But at the end of the day, like meeting the right person is a romantic thing. And like, if you can meet the girl of your dreams, would you not maybe step on a gray line once?
And you're off the dating market.
I'm off the dating market.
Did you use your own profile?
I did use my own profile, which was created by my writers, but I did have some level of involvement.
Did you tell her that you used ViDA to meet her?
Of course, I had to.
When did you tell her?
You know, I did wait a little while, and she actually
How long?
told me.
How long?
I probably waited about 4 weeks, about a month. She said she sent a message to her friend, and it's like, I don't know what to do. And then eventually, just as like came around to it, and I mean, she liked me, so.